right, let's get going. This is the exam one. I have put it up on Canvas, so if you go to the big table, it is linked there. It is password protected, so it uses the semester's top secret code, which you guys have. And as a reminder, it's MOBDEV21 online with a capital O is the unlock code for the exam. All right, so the exam has a theme, and the theme goes along with our Wizarding School theme, which is you're writing an app to sell these chocolate frogs, which played a pivotal role in one or more of the Harry Potter movies. And so it's an actual thing you can buy, the chocolate frogs and the boxes. They're not magical, I guess, but you can buy them. If in the middle of doing the exam you decide you have to have some, I have a link in the exam down at the bottom. But this is essentially an exam where you're gonna create 4 counters. Each of the counters is going to behave differently. The counters will display their numbers on top of these chocolate frog box images. And then you'll add features over the course of these 3 apps, which include totaling all 4 boxes, calculating the average of the 4 boxes, calculating the minimum and the maximum of the 4 boxes, and applying some rules to the counting of each of the 4 boxes. So they'll have different limits that you'll set. There is a resource kit available for you to download for the exam if you want to, and the link is right here. So it's on the MIS server in the download folder. There's a file called honeydukes.zip. When you get your exam, these links should work, or obviously that you could type it in. And you can use these or not. They're there just to make it easy. You can also use your own images. You can pick a different theme if you're not in love with Harry Potter or whatever. You can do, you could branch out and do Lord of the Rings or something. I don't know, whatever you want, really. All right, so there's 3 apps, and what you'll notice when we talk about them is it is essentially the same app. You're just adding features to it. But I want to encourage you to break the app up, to tackle it in at least 3 distinct kind of chunks, testing as you go. I would also recommend that you save your work often and keep backups in case something weird happens. In the end, though, you can turn this in as 1 app, or you can turn it in as 3 apps, whatever you like. But if you get to the end and you have everything working in the 3rd app, that's perfectly fine just to submit that. But even if you do that, I would still recommend saving your work at multiple steps, as you go. All right. So the take-home test is obviously open book, open notes, open Solr 2D / Corona SDK website, and obviously you can get as much help as you need from me. Other than that, it should be treated as an exam, and that what you're submitting should be your own original work for this exam. Obviously, omitting the resources if you use those resources, and obviously you can use Drawn to Code. That is perfectly okay. Let me think. All right, app 1. It's exactly what I just said. In the starting place, I say just get these 4 images loaded, placed on screen. There's 5 text display objects. Hook up the tap listener to each of the boxes, and then count. And so when I describe the counting, I'm going to start at the top left corner and then go clockwise around the counters. So in the first app, you can see hopefully there's 4 numbers. 4. All right, that's hard to see. -12. Yeah, -12, 24, and then something like 14. That is slow, blurry. Obviously, in the PDF that you download, this is all crisp. So the counting rules start out at the top left corner where you see the number 4 in the box. Let me use my pointer, fancy pointer, so right there. That box counts normally, so it counts up by 1s. Moving clockwise, the top right box where you see the -12 counts by -3s. So every time you hit the button, you take 3 off the counter. moving around counterclockwise where you see the 24, so the bottom right. So where you see the 24, that counts by sixes. And then the last box where you see 14 maybe, counts by random numbers, and the random numbers should be between -5 and +5. So keep this in mind. What you see on screen on the exam in terms of the picture is the result of clicking each box 4 times. And the sum is displayed there. Step 1, app 1 is just to get this basic UI created, looking the way you want it, basically, and get all these counters working, get the sum working. I think it's totally doable, totally in line with stuff that you've been doing, we've been doing in class and activities, you've been doing with homework. So I don't think there's any particular challenge. All right, well, let's move on to app 2 and see what you get to add. So in this version, I mean, you can see most of the differences, I think, just from the screenshot. And the screenshot shows you that, well, first off, everything's now in a magical font. There's a gradient background. There's apparently a reset button. And in addition to the sum or the total, the average is also calculated. So that's actually exactly what you're doing in this app. So the differences you see in the picture are the differences that you'll code in. If you download it and you use the Harry P font, which is this font that uses like lightning bolts and lots of the letters, I have that font, so you don't have to worry about whether I have it or not. Oh, the font I was trying to think of the name of the other day, I just thought of, it's Lumos, Lumos. And it's the one, I like Lumos a lot, but when I install it, it shows up in FontBook as new. It doesn't say anywhere that it's Lumos, but if you use Lumos, I also do have that. Obviously, I have the Hamlet or Not font that I use in the book. So if you use any of those, you can rest assured that I've got that font and your app will display as it should. If you branch out and do something wild with a different font, then you'll want to send me that font too. Otherwise, when I launch your app, it won't look correct. You're adding sound effects to this one, so you can't see that. So different sound effect, hopefully for each box, and then also hide the status bar to make it, just to make it look good. So you're going in this second app for adding several features, but really also just making it more, richer, more fun to use. Let's say. Here's just a little preview. This is what we're shooting for at the end, which is you should get the counter that counts by ones, counter that counts by -3s, counter that counts by sixes, and then this is the count by random numbers between -5 and +5. So the number can do almost anything. And so -5 and +5 also includes 0. So there are times where you'll tap that box and it will appear that it didn't count, but if you put the count out at your console, you'll see it just counted, a 0 and added a 0 and got the same result. All right, back to the exam. Okay, so app 3, the final app, gets you to tackle some more if-then logic. This will be heavy on your logic skills. So the goal is twofold. One is to display the minimum and the maximum frog boxes by highlighting them in a red or a green rectangle or rounded rectangle or circle, whatever you want to use, but just by surrounding it in some way with these colors. And so every time you tap one of the boxes, then the 4 values should be reevaluated and colors set appropriately for the surround boxes. There's nothing fancy there. Those are just standard display object rectangles. I set the color of the stroke. I set the stroke width so that you actually see the stroke. And then I set the color for the inside, the fill color. I set that to have an alpha of 0. So in Draw to Code, when you set the fill color, go to the RGB color tab in the color picker and slide the alpha value all the way to 0, which will make it invisible so that you can see the gradient behind it. And then the second part is limits. So using if-then logic, you're going to limit each of the counters, each of the tappable boxes to one of these rules. So same thing, clockwise, starting with the top left box. limit the first counter that counts by ones to 25. So when it hits 25, it should stop counting up. The second box, the one that counts by minus threes, I want you to stop it at minus 30. The third box, which counts by sixes, I want you to stop at 48. And then the fourth counter, which counts by a random number between plus 5 and minus 5, I want you to limit to plus or minus 20. Since it can go both directions, it could hit negative 20 as likely as positive 20. That's everything I'm asking for all three apps. And so you can see now when you get to app 3, it has everything. It does the counting, it has the sound effects, the fonts, the pretty background, the average in addition to the total, and the min-max checking, and the limits to each of the counters. So again, if you get here and knock app 3 and it does everything, you can just turn in app 3. That's fine. But if you, for whatever reason, if you can't get to app 3 or it just doesn't work for you, go ahead and turn in, app 2 as well. And if you want to turn in app 1, 2, and 3, that's great. Just when you submit, tell me whether or not I should, I need to look at 1 or 2 for any particular reason. But the goal would be to get to app 3 and actually have the app doing everything that it needs to do. Okay, so I have some notes and tips and hints. Just to remind you again, it's an exam, so it's unlike homework where you might work with friends on it and stuff. That's not the intention for this. It is, or it should be, your own original work for this exam. It's open book, and and if you do get stuck, I would give you the best help when we're in class and everybody's sitting around. I normally say, why would you ask the dope sitting next to you, for help when you could email me, and I'm going to give you vastly better help. So if you need help, I'm probably the best person to ask for it. Backup and security precautions, absolutely, make sure that if something horrible does happen, the power goes out or whatever, that you have a fallback version of the design and a backup of anything that you need. I'll be evaluating the exam using the default content area in Drawn to Code. If you give me a Drawn to Code design, I'll assume that's the design I should look at. If you've made hand-coded changes to config Lua or build.settings, you probably need to apprise me of that so I don't accidentally overwrite, any hand-coding work that you've done. And likewise, if you want me to, I normally grade stuff in the iPhone 5, the tall iPhone 5 kind of hardware setting. That's not what I use for screenshots because it's tall, and this is an iPhone 4 screenshot just because it makes the screenshots a little bit more compact so that I can fit more on screen. But if you view something wild or different, be sure to let me know so that I'm seeing what you intend for me to see. Yeah, put some thought and design into each app to make sure it's awesome. For apps 2 and 3, you'll need to format that average. You'll find really quickly when you calculate the average, and sometimes you get a really nice, what happened to my picture? That's so weird. I've disappeared from the presentation. Okay, I format the average. So, this screenshot isn't the best because it's 3. I thought one of them I had a decimal. Made sure I got a decimal. So this one you can see is 3.25. Well, if you're not careful, what you actually get when you calculate that is maybe a number like, well, I was thinking 2.75. So you might get a number like 2.749999 or something else with this repeating really long decimal or non-terminating decimal expansion where you don't want to display that in your app because it'll really look weird. So you want to round it. And there are various ways to round amounts, but to make it super easy, I've included a round function in Drawn to Code. So if you go to the functions palette, you'll find one that is round number. It will add this function to your stack, which is the function's called round, and it takes 2 parameters, the value you want to round and the number of decimal places. So once you add that to your stack and move it up in your stack, probably above where you're setting up all the app variables, and if you write other functions, you would probably put them up there. And if you're really looking at the exam handout hard, you'll see I have an update stats function. That's the way I coded it, so that after incrementing the counters, I just call update stats to update everything, just as a way to limit redundant code. You don't have to code it that way, but I did. anyway, if you add round to the stack, then you can, in the snippet, for instance, that updates the stats, you can call round and pass it the number you want to round. I'm showing this here with an actual value so you get a sense of what it does, but in your app, this would be probably a variable of some sort. And then 2 decimal places probably is what you want to round it to. And that'll do the rounding for you. All right. So I don't know, as you guys are looking at this, you might think this seems really tough. I don't know how I'm going to squeeze all, I don't know how to do some of this stuff. This is going to be a bit of a challenge. Or you might be thinking, this looks like homework that we did, some of it, and follow-alongs that we did, kind of a combination of several different things. And I feel pretty good about it. I think I could probably knock it out in an evening. What I would say is it's not coded to be terribly difficult. It's testing what I think you should know at this point. Based on what we've read and done. But at the same time, you guys have probably figured out in some of the homework problems that you can get stuck on the dumbest little typo, and spin your wheel for an hour or two before you realize you mistyped something. You transposed 2 letters, you capitalized something that wasn't supposed to be capitalized, or you had something in your stack that was out of order. You tried to use the gradient, but it was defined after you tried to use it, so it wasn't showing up. Whatever the case may be, you get into these things where you can lose a lot of hours. So I would say it's due March 11th by class time, so you have a full week. But there are some people who will wait till March 10th to knock it out. So I would recommend against that to the fullest extent possible. I would break it up at least into 3, maybe 4 distinct coding sessions where you can work your way forward through these, and then give yourself a session to kind of polish everything up if it needs that. Also, please note that in terms of the course schedule, I don't have a class. I'm not going to cover new material on Monday. I've set that aside as an exam work day. So instead, I'll hop on Zoom and just hang around and take questions, or issues. So if you get stuck on something, it'd be best to know that by Monday. Obviously, if you don't start coding this until Thursday, then it's going to be tough to get help at that point, when otherwise much earlier you totally could have. So break it up. Don't force yourself to try to knock it out in a marathon coding session the night before. And obviously have some fun. It's designed to be kind of fun to get working. And when you get it working with all the min and the max stuff and the sound effects, and that reset button resets everything. It's you should feel like you've accomplished something fun. So definitely keep that in mind. If you're one of the people who thinks this is all so easy, in fact, while you're talking, I've actually completed it. There are extra galleon challenges that I have in mind for some stuff that you can do. So if you knock this out and you think I also want to keep going and earn a couple more galleons, then email me and I'll send you the extra galleon challenges. I would recommend testing, saving and testing all the time, like I do in all of our step-by-step stuff. So when you get to the point where you think I can save that design and double check that everything does do what I think I just coded it to do, and if you stop and test it and verify it at that point, you're much better off. Because if you find it then, hey, I just added 1 snippet, and now all of a sudden it's not working right, so it must probably be in that snippet. If you add a ton of code and don't bother to check it in the simulator, and then you check it in the simulator and you have all these weird issues, then it's much harder to look back at your code or your stack and then figure out what the culprit or culprits are. All right. I think that's all I plan to say about this.